Now I'm going to show you how to configure your TwinLink using our defined ToolBox software. So the first thing we need to do is to launch our ToolBox software. Now the next step is for me to connect my TwinLink input unit, which I'm just going to convert to my live webcam to show you how quick and easy it is to connect this up. Here you can see I'm simply powering up the 24 volts into the input unit. I then take my bridge key and insert it into the USB port on my computer. I take the other end of the cable and insert it into the program port on the front of my input unit. And now I'm ready to go.
We're now going to have a look at configuring the TwinLink with the ToolBox software. So let's go back to the Connect tab and we'll connect to the unit I've got here on my desk. It's already connected, as Anna showed us, to both USB and power. So all I have to do now is just click the green button and the software goes away and it finds the correct COM port and everything like that from the USB, and it's all connected without you having to worry about anything like that. The diagram in the middle here is showing us our typical setup. So we've got the universal input node in orange. That's what we're connected to now. That's the only thing that we're going to be setting up today. We don't actually have to set up the output node because all of the output node's configuration is programmed into the input node, and then that copies across automatically when you connect things. So it's actually also nice to note that we don't have to have the output node powered today to set up the whole system, so we can set up just the input node, and then later on in the field we can plug the output node into power as well. This device has got several different regions that we can pick from, and you'll see the certifications there. So that's just changing the wireless transmit power to meet the approvals for each country. So we're going to pick USA for this one. We click apply and it goes away and applies that to the unit. So that's all now set up for use in the USA. So we click on the input and output tab up the top here, the purple one, and it's showing us information about our inputs. If you look down the left hand side, you'll see a 1 and a 2. That's our two channels. So I can click on both of those channels and I get data from the two of them. Both channels are interchangeable in terms of features and capability. We're going to use channel 1 today, and we'll be setting that up for our tank application. At the moment it's in 0 to 10 volt mode, and I've got it plugged into a voltage source. So I'll just show you some of the basic features that we've got here, and then we'll have a look at configuring it. Down the bottom, one nice thing to use when you're commissioning or debugging the TwinLink is this live trace graph. So at the moment all you can see there is a blue line. That's actually responding to the input value though. So if I change the input value from 4.9 volts and turn it up a bit, you can see the graph changing as I change the input value. So that's going to give you a real-time idea of what's going on with your signal. So that's quite handy if you've got a noisy sensor, or if you're just debugging something, or you want to make sure that something's there. It also changes and tracks the output as well. So you can see now we're seeing the output from 4 to 20 milliamps, and that's tracking the input as well. Again, we have the help pane on the side, and that's giving us things like our wiring diagrams for our 0 to 10 volt mode. There's a few different options there that we can click from, and it gives us different wiring diagrams. Let's have a look though at setting this up for our example application. So our example application is a pressure sensor monitoring the water level in a tank, and then the other side of the TwinLink pair, the output, is being used to control a motor pump. So the input that we see here, input 1, is the signal that we're seeing on the input device, input channel 1. The output side is actually on the other side of the wireless link. That's what's coming out of the output node. So when we program in settings here, that's what will come across later on when we power up the output node. So let's put this in to milliamp mode. If I click on the input mode drop down here, there's a whole lot of different sensor types. So there's temperature and pulse and current sensors and all sorts of things. But right here is milliamps, and then we can further down we can select between 0 to 20 milliamps and 4 to 20 milliamps. So we'll select 4 to 20, and that is now going to be set up. If I flick over to my current source and I apply those changes, we can see I've now got 8.3 milliamps going into the device. So that's great if I wanted to know what the value was in milliamps, but I'd prefer it to be in something human readable. So to make it a bit easier for me to understand what's going on, I'm going to go down to our scaling and offset heading here, and I'm going to pick custom scaling. Custom scaling is going to let me show the input value here. I want to show it in feet. So that's feet of water in the tank from 0 to, let's say, 20 is the top of my tank. So if I click edit, I can see here input milliamps of 4 milliamps is a display value at the moment of 4, and input of 20 at the moment is 20. So that's straight, no scaling. But from my data sheet, I know that my sensor at 0 psi will output 4 milliamps, and at 15 psi will output 20 milliamps. So I could put in 0 and 15 here, and I would get the input value coming up in psi, but it'd be better if I can actually put in feet. So 0 psi is going to be 0 feet, and if we look up for water, 15 psi is 34.6 feet. So if I now click done, that 8 milliamps, once I click apply, will be translated into feet. So that's now 10.03 feet of water from the bottom of the tank. The retransmission is still showing for a display value of 4 is a display value, an output value of 4 milliamps. That's actually a bit confusing at the moment because that 4 is now 4 feet, and that's not really going to mean anything to us. So it'd be much better to say that a display value of 0, which is 0 feet of water, is going to be 4 milliamps. And let's say that the top of my tank is 20 feet, so now that's going to be 20 milliamps. So it's nice to note that we don't actually have to put 34.6 feet in here again, so we're using a different scaling for the input and for the output. So if I click apply, you can see that the output value has now changed, and that is scaled now for the extents of our tank being on that 4 to 20 milliamp output. So that's the input taken care of. So let's have a look at the set points for our application. The set points are what we're going to use to control the pump. On the output side, we have 2 relays and 2 digital outputs. At the moment, you'll see that each of these is in transparent mode. Sorry, that one's still in control. But the rest of them by default come in transparent mode. So what the transparent mode does is there's inputs on the input side, and the state of them is sent to the output side, and when they're in transparent mode, they will echo exactly the logical state that you see on the input side. So if you if you close the contact here, you'll close the contact there. So let's have a look at relay 1. We're going to use this to control our pump. It has a whole lot of different modes, but we put them into 2 categories of control and alarm. Because we're controlling a pump, control is the obvious choice. If I select this function drop down here, we can choose from a whole lot of different applications that we've programmed in. You actually see a diagram here as well for the different modes. So we do have heat and cool modes and all sorts of other modes in here, but the one we want today is the energized below, because when the water level goes below our trip point, we want to turn on the pump, and when it goes above a certain value, we want to turn off the pump. So on, off, energized below. And you'll notice that on the right hand side here, our help is showing us a nice graph of the behavior here. So I can set up points here, and that's going to show us how it's going to work. So what we want to do, let's say we want the pump to turn on at when there's 6 feet of water, and we want it to turn off when there is 14 feet of water in the tank. I can now click apply. Alright, and that's all done. That's all ready to go. So that will now, you can see in the diagram here, when the water drops below the value of 6, it'll turn on, and it will turn off again at 14.